I was on the Isle of Iona and working actually as a maintenance man in a hotel there, and there was also a very keen gardener who just got me interested really. I go up and help him in the vegetable garden, and he had a brilliant organic garden, and we got to talking quite a bit about how he was doing it and also the reasons for doing it organically, and that got me interested. The soil, if you don't disturb it and put some organic matter on top as a mulch, you lose sight of the soil, and it's still working for you. In fact, it's very much working for you because there's all the soil life coming to feed the organic matter on the surface. Worms particularly take it all in, and you never have to cope with the gooey, soggy soil underneath, or the fact that it might be very dry. And for instance, last summer I grew some celeriac, which are one of the most moisture-loving vegetables, quite difficult to grow into a good size. And I didn't water them, and it was a dry summer, and they grew really well. And I think it was because partly the soil had not been disturbed, the moisture was all conserved, and there was a mulch of nice cow manure on top. So as long as you get your soil clean in the first place, and I spend quite a lot of time advising people how to do that, because that is the hardest bit, is the first year, and getting your soil clean. And I suggest using a mulch of cardboard, polythene, organic matter, anything you can to cover the weeds and vegetation that are growing. The main benefit of having less weeds actually is that your garden is more beautiful, and you're more inclined to be involved. I've seen too many gardeners be discouraged by being swamped by weeds, particularly on weedy allotments that they've inherited. And it's such a pity, because often they're not far from really cracking it, but they let the weeds get away for one reason or another.
And of course, once the weeds do mature, then you get all the seeds.
Exactly.
So then it becomes an ongoing problem.
Yeah, so I really do emphasise that point, that get the soil clean in the first place, and then keep on top of it as well. Don't wait until weeds are knocking on the door, so to speak, but look for them and pull them when they're small. You know, it's a lot less work to pull a small weed than it is to pull a big one, and that way you solve the problem of any more weeds going to seed.
And how do you deal with gardeners' pet hate, slugs?
Well, it's an ongoing issue. The slugs are always with us, and I just gear up my whole gardening to avoiding them as much as possible, or having strong plants. So for example, at the moment I'm pricking out lettuce in here. This is January, rather than sow them outside where they would almost certainly be eaten by slugs if they even came up. But what I'm always trying to do is to raise a strong, healthy plant which can resist slugs to its best ability, and then having less weed means also less slugs. So there's all sorts of ways around it, but they're always going to be there, and you have to bear it in mind.
So you don't use slug pellets?
No, I don't. Only in very extreme situations. I use about 3 a year, I should think.
What have you got here? I mean, you've got clay soil, you've got some polytunnels.
Yeah, two polytunnels, not very big ones, and they are mainly to grow salads in the winter, which is growing in there now, and then a few summer crops as well, like melons. But the main reason for the tunnels is the winter salad, which is extremely popular, especially once it really gets going in March and April.
So what sort of salad plants do you grow in the winter?
In the winter you can grow a wider range than the summer, in fact, and in fact a lot of the ones that you can see growing here, these are trays filled with George Orham's cow manure. In fact, all there is in these trays is cow manure. And
they look very healthy, don't they?
Yes, I've had 1 or 2 losses, which is because of the cold, I think, more than anything, because it does freeze in here as well.
So what have you got growing there?
This is mustard, for example. It's a frilly green mustard, quite spicy. All these 3 plants in this tray are mustard. That's a red frills mustard.
Right.
And then that's called green in the snow for its extreme hardiness, and it's also the hottest one, so that really fills your mouth with mustard flavour. And then in this tray here I've got lettuce, 3 varieties of lettuce. There's Mottistone, Cockard and Grenoble Red, which I'm picking as leaf lettuce, so I just take off the outer leaves.
Yep. And it keeps on growing.
Yep. And then this one we have spinach and landcress and winter purslane. So that's 3 slightly unusual salad leaves, which are all very tasty. And actually the spinach, after the cold weather, the spinach becomes incredibly sweet They all become sweeter in the cold weather.
Right.
These salads have all frozen many times, and so it just shows they are frost hardy. But it helps them to be in here because they're protected from the worst of the weather. This tray is all Mizunas, so there's purple Mizuna, green Mizuna with special thick stems, and a red Mizuna. And these are very fast growing plants, quite mild in flavour, really good for winter.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have a mixture. There's some endive, some komatsuna, that's another Mizuna. There's some rocket, tatsoi, more mustard, and again the same in that one, so a bit of everything. And in fact, in these two trays I'm comparing different composts. This one is camellia and this one is my own compost from the garden, and it's interesting to see that actually the plants at the moment are healthier in the homemade garden compost, which I have noticed before. The camellia is very good, but it's a little bit beefy and perhaps a bit too much oomph sometimes, and you get slightly slower growth in the compost, but perhaps a bit better balance. This one is camellia and this one is my own compost from the garden, and it's interesting to see that actually the plants at the moment are healthier in the homemade garden compost, which I have noticed before. The camellia is very good, but it's a little bit beefy and perhaps a bit too much oomph sometimes, and you get slightly slower growth in the compost, but perhaps a bit better balance. This is an undug bed which has the compost on top. This was one wheelbarrow load of compost. You can see it's there on top, and look how beautifully soft and fluffy
lovely,
it is now. This is some homemade compost, which has been well frosted.
It's broken down quite finely, hasn't it?
Nicely broken, yeah.
Given how heavy the normal soil is here,
yeah,
it's lovely.
Exactly. And then we can compare that with the soil here. Although, having said that, this soil is now much improved by the organic
frost,
matter.
Oh,
well,
right.
Because I'm putting the same amount of organic matter.
Oh, okay.
But I'm digging it in.
Yeah.
But now this is the fourth time I've dug this bed and incorporated that amount of compost or manure.
It doesn't look as good as the other one, I have to say.
Well, that's because it's the black is further down basically.
Yeah.
This one, for example, we had onions, and 2 rows of onions on this bed yielded 6.5 kilos. That's the undug bed with 6.5 kilos of onions, and on the dug bed there were 4.5 kilos of onions. And the difference in the onions was pronounced because, if you think about it, onions do most of their growing in the spring. They grow strongly in April, May and early June, and then they start bulbing up. So it was that they were picking up that beneficial difference of the spring growth.
Was there a difference in the flavour?
No, we've tried that and can't pick it up, to be honest.
Right.
Flavour's a very hard thing to assess, and it's so subjective.
And to compare.
Yeah, it would be lovely to perhaps I should set up a proper sort of taste panel, blind tasting, but I'd be surprised if there was a consistent result. I mean, what there is a difference is, though, and I do notice, particularly with the spinach in May, that the leaves on the dug bed look less lush. They look a bit paler, and you can't help thinking there ought to be a difference. And I haven't checked the spinach, actually. We should do that. It is amazing how much I sell in Bruton. Bruton alone. Bruton's a bit of a salad megalopolis, and I supply all 4 shops on the High Street and the Chapel Restaurant, and then the Montague Inn here and the Pilgrim's Rest at Lovington. 1 shop in Castle Carey now, and 1 in Wincanton, and that's it.
Can you grow enough to keep up with the demand?
Just about, and that's just about where it's nice to be. I could expand, but I don't think I really want to. It's a lot of work to keep it going like this, and it's going well, so I think I'll stop here.
I was going to say it's a growing business, if you'll pardon the pun.
Yes, it is. It certainly is in every way.